Ladies and gentlemen, Canadian Armed Force members, veterans, honored guests, what a thrill it is for me to be here in Vancouver to present the Minister of Veterans Affairs Commendation Award. This award is going out to 14 outstanding Canadians who have given so much back to their communities to ensure our veterans are supported. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I know full well in my time as Minister of Veterans Affairs, traveling across this country from coast to coast, meeting the great men and women who have served this country, well, Veterans Affairs Canada can't do it alone. And that's why I'm so proud of the work that the 14 recipients in this room, and in fact, all of you, for being here tonight and your various contributions to the cause have given. I can say I've been now out in BC for a couple of days. Had the honor of just being in Prince George, where we reopened a Veterans Affairs office that was closed. That will go a long way to helping those veterans out in that community get the care, compassion, and respect they deserve. Also here this week, I get to announce the opening of a Veterans Affairs office right here in Surrey, BC, that will establish outreach for 7,500 veterans and their families and make sure that they're getting the help they need where and when they need it. But the the Minister of Veterans Affairs Commendation Award was stood up in 2001 by our Governor General, and as recognition to great people like yourselves receiving the award tonight. It was also the emblem you will receive on your commendation was actually selected by the Queen herself and put forward as our royal seal here today. I can say I've read the accomplishments of those recipients here tonight. They have given so much, whether that's in commemoration responsibilities, whether that's being at our funeral visits, whether it's being at hospital visits, whether that's supporting veterans in our local legions or ANAVETs. You have done the heavy lifting that we hold dear as Canadians. I can also say that we understand the deep dread and attitude we owe our veterans. I was born in this country in 1969, and I've lived in peace and security my entire life. It's because men and women sign up to do whatever the nation asks to go forward into very difficult and daunting circumstances. From Vimy Ridge to Juno Beach, from the Korea War to our peacekeeping missions, from the Gulf War to Afghanistan, our mission there, long mission there, and our current efforts in the Middle East. We owe a deep debt of gratitude to them, and I know each and every one in this room shares our commitment to veterans, to honor them, to respect them, to ensure they have the capacity to go forward and build their lives. And it just warms my heart to be here with you tonight, and to recognize your outstanding accomplishments in supporting our veterans and their families. Thank you so much for allowing me the privilege of joining you here tonight and being part of this august celebration.
Thank you, Minister Hehr and MP Rumi. We will now proceed with the presentations. I will briefly introduce each recipient one at a time. During your introduction, you'll be escorted by a staff member to join the minister in front of these commendation banners for the presentation of your commendation. Official photos will be taken during the presentation, and recipients will then return to their table. We'll hold your framed certificate for you until after your meal. After the final presentation, we'll coordinate a group photo with the minister, as well as photos with recipients and their families, should you wish it. And that will be your time to take photos as well. We'll send each recipient a CD of the photos later on. Full citations on each recipient appear in your copy of the commendation program. A reminder that we are recording the ceremony today for our Veterans Affairs Canada Facebook page, and we welcome those viewers now. Thank you for watching. Our first recipient is Mr. Cameron Black from Port Moody. Mr. Black is a member of the Royal Canadian Army Cadet Corps 2827 British Columbia Regiment, Duke of Connaught's Own. Since 2005, he has been an integral part of local commemorative events and special veterans activities in the Port Moody area, including the Remembrance-themed Canada Day celebrations. He has been a part of the military history shows at the George Derby Veterans Care Centre and with the annual Military History Encampment at Parks Canada's Fort Rod Hill National Historic Site. Mr. Black is committed to honouring Canadian veterans. Congratulations, Mr. Cameron Black. Next, we have Mr. Sean Black, also from Port Moody. Mr. Black is a former member of the Royal Canadian Army Cadet Corps 2573, 6th Field Engineer Squadron. Since the Year of the Veteran in 2005, he has been actively involved in commemoration in his community. His endeavors include assisting at the local public library during Veterans Week, working with the Port Moody Station Museum, and activities at the George Derby Veterans Care Centre. During an event to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the start of the First World War, Mr. Black stayed awake throughout the night, ringing a Second World War ship's bell every 15 minutes to signal the change of centuries. Mr. Black's dedication to Canadian veterans is well known in his local community. Congratulations, Mr. Sean Black. Next, we have Mr. Larry Boyd from Gibsons. Mr. Boyd is a veteran of the Second World War. In 1960, he became a member of the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 109, and has been an integral part of the organization ever since. Currently, as service officer, Mr. Boyd ensures veterans receive the assistance they require, regardless of circumstance, and always approaches them with tact and respect. He is also the Poppy Chair and works tirelessly each year during Gibsons Remembrance Week, visiting schools and encouraging students to enter the Legion's poster, essay, and poem contest. Mr. Boyd's work cleaning up the Gibsons Veterans Cemetery engages local secondary school students in learning the importance of remembrance. Congratulations, Mr. Boyd. Our next recipient this evening is Mr. Gordon Fergus from Surrey. Mr. Fergus is a retired member of the British Forces and the Canadian Armed Forces. Shortly after retirement, he joined the Royal Canadian Legion and became deeply involved at all levels, including 5 terms as branch president. He has acted as Sergeant-at-Arms and Parade Marshal for the annual Remembrance Day ceremonies as well. Mr. Fergus was the branch chaplain for a number of years, and as part of those duties attended veterans' funerals as part of the Honor Guard, helping to give each an honorable and respectful military-style funeral. Mr. Fergus is also responsible for creating and adding to the branch's military museum room. Congratulations, Mr. Fergus. Our next recipient is from Maple Ridge, Mr. Alan Fox. Mr. Fox is passionate about the military history of the Commonwealth and has shown a keen interest in educating people and promoting the importance of remembrance in his local community for Remembrance Day parades, as well as commemorative exhibits. In 2014, Mr. Fox worked, along with other volunteers, at the Port Moody Station Museum to construct what became one of Canada's most significant First World War exhibits, a full-size trench. With the project completed, Mr. Fox now spends many weekends volunteering as an interpretive guide, where he dresses in an authentic First World War uniform and shares the story of Canadians and the First World War. Congratulations, Mr. Fox. From West Vancouver, our next recipient is Mr. Harry Greenwood. Mr. Greenwood is a veteran of the Second World War. He joined Branch 60 of the Royal Canadian Legion in 1992 and served in many executive positions over the years, including now as service officer for the past 6 years. Mr. Greenwood routinely goes above and beyond the regular service officer duties. Mr. Greenwood is a strong advocate for continuing education and encourages veterans to seek further education opportunities. He initiated an elder college and facilitated literary and writing classes for veterans and seniors at Capilano University. For his Legion branch, Mr. Greenwood speaks with students in high schools and encourages remembrance in the community. Congratulations, Mr. Greenwood. From Port Moody, Mr. Svend Hansen. He is our next recipient. Mr. Hanson is a Second World War veteran of the Royal Canadian Navy. Since 2004, Mr. Hanson has volunteered as a speaker with Historica Canada's Memory Project. With about 70 presentations so far, with no plans of slowing down despite being in his 90s, Mr. Hanson averages 7 to 8 presentations annually and speaks to all ages. These events involve Mr. Hanson traveling throughout the Lower Mainland, speaking to Rotary clubs, cadet organizations, and at many schools. His presentations are greatly appreciated, and he has volunteered significant amounts of his time to providing a first-hand account of the war, and he shares the stories of sacrifice, horror, and eventually peace that he experienced in his time in service. Congratulations, Mr. Hanson. Our next recipient is from Delta, Mr. James Raymond Ingram. Mr. Ingram is a veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces and a former police officer. He is a long-time member of the Royal Canadian Legion with many roles, including his current position as the branch's service officer. He initiated an annual Veterans Luncheon at the branch, and during the lead-up to Veterans Week and Remembrance Day, Mr. Ingram visits schools, youth groups, and the Adult Education Centre for New Canadians to explain the history and sacrifices of Canadian veterans. Mr. Ingram also reaches out to healthcare facilities to provide on-site remembrance services for veterans who are unable to attend their local cenotaph ceremony. Congratulations, Mr. Ingram. Also from Delta, Mr. William Lloyd Jones. Mr. Jones is a veteran of the Second World War. He is a long-standing member of the Royal Canadian Legion and has served as president of his Legion branch and continues to sit on the executive. He visits veterans in local hospitals and care facilities daily. During his visits, he often assists veterans and their families with their applications for benefits to which they may be entitled. For many years, Mr. Jones has been director of the Amos Ferguson Foundation, which provides Legion-sponsored housing in Langley, British Columbia. He is also present at Veterans Week events and Remembrance Day celebrations, laying wreaths and speaking to local schools. Congratulations, Mr. Jones. Our next recipient is Mr. Paul Lee from Vancouver. Mr. Lee is a veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces, still active with the 15th Field Artillery Regiment of the RRCA. In 2002, he joined Pacific Unit 280 of the Anavets. He has served as president and is currently treasurer and service officer. He organizes the unit's participation in the annual Vimy Ridge Parade, has assisted in the organization of Remembrance Day parades, and has taken the lead on the annual Poppy Fund drive. He ensures that the welfare of veterans is a primary focus and is sure to include them in all activities. In 2004, Mr. Lee joined the Chinese Canadian Military Museum Society in Vancouver. and as public relations officer, he visits public schools with Second World War veterans to engage students and educate them on the contributions of the Chinese Canadians to the Canadian military. Congratulations, Mr. Lee. From Prince George, our next recipient is Major Rick M. Lewis. Major Lewis has been a member of the Canadian Armed Forces since 1977 and is currently the Area Cadet Instructor Cadre Officer for Pacific Region Cadets in northern British Columbia. He has been an active member of the Royal Canadian Legion for more than 34 years, serving in many roles. He has dedicated over 30 years to coaching, leading, and mentoring veterans remembrance projects throughout northern BC and assisting in numerous cenotaph upgrades, monument dedications, and flag installations. He diligently promotes the spirit of youth involvement in supporting Canada's veterans, particularly among cadet corps and squadrons. Congratulations, Major Lewis. From Vancouver, our next recipient is Louie Lou Mazur. Mr. Mazur joined Anavet's Unit 100 in 1985. In 2000, he served in executive roles and also spent 4 years as the unit's service officer. In 2010, Mr. Mazur received his life membership in the association. To this day, he continues to visit those with ailing health in hospitals and seniors' homes and assists with veterans' luncheons at the unit. Mr. Mazur has consistently marched in parades, has been the liaison officer for the Provincial Command Color Guard for the past 6 years, has been a member of the South Vancouver Veterans Council since 2005, and represented the Provincial Command on the Vancouver Remembrance Day Committee. His dedication and commitment to Unit 100 and to all units within the province is immeasurably appreciated. Congratulations, Mr. Mazur. Our next recipient is Mr. Brian Robert McKenna from Delta. Mr. McKenna is a veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces. He has participated in many programs offered to veterans and has developed a keen understanding of some of the issues veterans experience in accessing these programs. He served as a volunteer paraprofessional with the Veterans Transition Network and helped establish a social support group for veterans in need called the Veterans Assistance Group. Mr. McKenna, who has a service dog of his own, volunteers his time to assist veterans with new dogs and to educate guide dog trainers on the needs of veterans. Mr. McKenna remains active with the Royal Westminster Regiment Association. Congratulations, Mr. McKenna. Our final recipient today is Mr. Edmund Wu from North Vancouver. Mr. Wu has demonstrated a strong passion and care for veterans for many years. He has served on the executive committee and has spent multiple years as the first and second vice president of the Royal Canadian Legion's TVS branch 44. Mr. Wu has also served as secretary and as vice president of the Chinese Canadian Military Museum Society. As a member of the society, with the management of the William Head Institution, Mr. Wu helped organize the construction of a cairn with a commemorative plaque at the Chinese cemetery. Mr. Wu is also a member of the British Columbia Provincial Command Color Guard of the Anavets. In this role, he often participates in parades and ceremonies. Congratulations, Mr. Wu. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise for the playing of the Royal Anthem? Thank you. Please be seated.